hard and fast here, it left the gold exposed to selling opportunities. And it wasn't one trade, and that's what we were talking about. It wasn't one single trade. It was a series of shorts along the top line. And my goodness, we've just seen a $2,000 downside to that live call this morning, which is pretty good. Pretty damn good, guys. It was cherry-picked, Nessie, because it was, well, it actually was, because it wasn't one trade. It was about a half a dozen trades. It wasn't just one trade, but I think we've kind of made sure everybody understands that about trading. When you've got that much value, you've got to work offers. You can't just pick up a trade here and pick up a trade there and then not work the offers, because you'll scratch, you'll tens, you'll scratch, you'll tens, you'll scratch, you'll fives, you'll scratch, and then boom, all of a sudden, $2,000 profit. Because you don't get the big swings very often, and the big swings come from working offers or working bids. On this occasion, it's paid out massively, as it did on oil. Now, the oil was easier because it was a single trade. I think James will tell you that. It was a single trade from the RGL last night. It never even tested the RGL. It never even gave you a chance to add back in on the RGL. As soon as it left the RGL last night, it was gone, and that was it for $2,000. Your money was already gone on $2,000 rampage to the downside. It was amazing, but it was also more difficult. It was also more difficult because if you missed the break, it was harder to get back into the deal. So you needed to be in the break on those occasions, whereas gold this morning, it was easy to be in the trade because you got lots of opportunities to keep working it, but that easiness comes with a price. That easiness comes with a price of, am I right? Because I seem to be selling it and selling it and selling it and selling it, and nothing seems to be happening. I don't know if I'm on the right trade here, but that's what confidence comes with. If you add confidence to that narrative of, I keep selling it and nothing seems to be happening, yeah, because the trade doesn't work on your time frame, guys. The trade works on the time frame of the institutional sellers that are coming into a top edge to sell into that narrative, and that's exactly how it's played out. It's beautiful. It is beautiful. You know, guess what, guys? Everything's beautiful in its own way. Oh, yes. Everything's beautiful in its own way. Bonds are starting to get a little bit edgy, I think is probably the right word for it. A little bit edgy. Did anybody get the DVO1 sell? Because that was spectacular. Nest Monster, did you get any sells at 25s, 26s? DVO1 short. Take a look and see, guys. Take a look and see. Remember we talked about that floating 10-year. So what's a floating 10-year? The floating 10-year is the 3s minus the 2s, leaves a floating 10-year treasury. So where are the notes floating? The notes are either floating on the demand side or the supply side of treasuries, yes? The notes are either floating on the demand side or the supply side of treasuries. Nessie knows this. So when you look at the, well, everybody knows this actually because we did it in classroom. So where's the net? Where's the supply or the demand for notes? Can you all see it? Can everybody see where the supply and demand is for notes? I personally think it's really obvious, but it's a big question. It's a big question. Does anybody else see where the supply and demand is for notes? Well, yes, because we can see that the supply of notes is very visible. So if I'm selling the blue, I'm selling 3. If I'm buying the purple, I'm buying 2. So if the purple is lower than the blue, the supply of notes. So when I look at this picture here, I see a bond supply trade. I see a bond supply trade. So I look at that picture there and say, right, we've got a lot of supply for treasuries through that phase there. Does that supply vanish? Does that supply ever vanish completely? I wouldn't say so. I think the supply stays, and on a macro scale basis, you might argue that it's starting to vanish there. I disagree. I don't think it is vanishing. But what is this here? Still supply for treasuries again, isn't it? Do you agree with that? So that's still supply for treasuries right there, isn't it? Because look at what the purple's doing. Look at what the threes are doing. The threes are actually going lower. The blue is going higher. So there's still supply for treasuries here, isn't there? So we see that going up. We see that staying down, and if not, possibly even dropping. Is that supply for treasuries? Well, think about it. You're selling 3 and you're buying 2. So if you're selling 3 and buying 2, what's your net position? Short treasuries. It's like 2x minus 1x. What are you left with? X. If X is demand, then obviously you're left with demand. If X is supply, then you're left with supply. But X is the float. X is what's left over. So when we see what's left over is supply, 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 supply. Obviously the big supply was here. Smaller supply here because it's not really exactly visible. But then we get big supply again here. Big supply, not just supply, big supply. We can start to recognize that this should all be short treasuries. Does everybody understand that? This is in classroom yesterday, by the way. This is in classroom yesterday. So what are we going to be doing with treasuries? We're going to be selling, we're going to sell a lot of treasuries, right? So what happens to treasuries? In that supply environment here, treasuries top out and sell, top out and then massive sell. Absolutely huge supply profits from your short treasury trades. So you can see that all we've done is supply treasuries into those high prints. All we've done is supply treasuries into those upticks. And obviously you might say, but is it just that single trade at the top edge? Well, it is the top edge. So yes, you might be able to see that, but obviously there was another sell trade perhaps around about here at 20s as we broke through the 18s. So you might have been able to take advantage of that little bit of business there and so on. So yes, the answer is you could easily have got the top edge supply trade onto treasuries following that change just there. It's very, very, very powerful. Seeing that floating supply of treasuries or floating demand for treasuries coming from the curve gives us directionality on treasuries. Did it come with a volume surge? What do you think? Remember, these adjustments, guys, we're asking if it comes with a volume surge so that we can see that floating supply of treasuries with a volume surge. Well, it's not exactly a volume surge, but it's certainly higher volumes. Certainly higher volumes on that big up candle right there. So we can start to recognize the story. We can start to recognize the narrative. Does anybody see demand for floating demand for treasuries? Well, if I start zooming into the charts a little bit here, does anybody see any floating demand for treasuries? Starts to show up here, doesn't it? For the first time, I mean, you might be arguing that there's a little bit of floating demand here as well, but that's not on a good solid down candle. I want to see a big solid down candle with volumes. So when I see that demand starting to show up for treasuries here, do you see the floating demand? The purple's actually making a higher high, the blue is not. So then when we get that big down candle, you're saying they could take up that floating demand on that candle right there. They could close off this position, in other words. They could take their profits off the trade at that point. And that gives you your opportunity to do exactly that, take the trade off at that point. And if you did that, of course, you've managed to get a reasonable little play off of that price level. Pretty good? Well, it's pretty good if you can see it and understand it, guys. Of course, it's pretty good. But you can see the floating demand, the floating supply in here, the floating demand in here. It's about recognizing those little twists and turns that give you the big profits, the big swings, the big trades. That's all we got to do, guys. That's all we got to do. Max sold some NASDAQ, so I've just taken a short trade against a lean on the Max sell trade, and I've put a little stop in at break even, guys. Idiot. Let's see if we can hold on to it. We're just in it and no more. Still holding on to it. Still just holding on to it. Because by the time I seen it, I was talking about bonds and I didn't get the best price. So I'm hoping to still be able to hold on to it so that we can show the trade. I'll take a screenshot because obviously I've missed the best trade possible, but I've got a screenshot of it anyway, so you can see what I was doing, just so that you get a flavour for the trade itself. Okay, so here's the max sell trade right there. So you can see that what I was looking for was I was looking to try and get a bit of action against that uptick there on this candle here. I was looking for a little bit of action. And when you look for a little bit of action, you can see the trade starting to set up in this environment here. You can actually see the trade. There's the lean right there. You see it? There's the lean. So I was trying to get in as close to that lean as I could, and I missed because obviously I was talking about the bonds. I missed the opportunity to get that price, and the price managed to move, 6 ticks before I could even take the trade on because I was obviously slow to the party. If I was slow to the party, guys, not very much we can do about it. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Just one of those things. But let's see how this top edge evolves, because Max is still selling into the top edge off the 65s. I've just taken another bit of business there off the 65s. I'm going to be looking to try and take some 55s if we can get it, 57s. Taking a little bit of profit at 57.5 there myself. 55s, big target price, 57s traded, 57s traded, 7s traded here now, 6.5 traded, 6.25 traded, 7.25 trading just now, 7 evens. Target price on that sell was 55s, so we're just a little bit shy of target price just now, guys, in this one. And there we go, 55s, 54s traded. So there you go, 10 points on the max sell. And that was good. That was very good. 10 points on the max sell. So there's the trades there, guys. You can see them. You can see the max. This was a little spinner. So there was a little sell there, but it was okay. We never get stopped out. So we added to that spinner just there. And then we got another bit of selling just there at 62s. And that sell at 62s up here, 62.5 up here, obviously targeting down into the next phase. And we're obviously targeting down into that phase there. So there's the initial target price and a very, very quick successive sell trade. Nice, pleasant, and another bit of max profit taken. Another bit of max profit taken. Nice trade, guys. Nice trade. That was good. So that make that $1,200, guys, for max today. $1,200. That sell's still in for me, by the way. I've still got the short trade in, so it's still making some nice money. I've taken some out. I took some out at the 52.5 there on the Qs, and it spiked off the 50s. It was a good trade. It was a very good trade. Sexy.